Hey guys, it's Todd with the Do Different podcast. Got another fantastic episode today. Our guest is Anik, and she's joined us, and we're gonna have a good discussion about a few different items. So, welcome in, Anik. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me, Todd. I'm great. I'm so happy to be sharing space with you here today, and I can't wait for an engaging conversation.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. So, for the viewing audience that doesn't know you or what your modality is or what you're about, take a few minutes and introduce yourself, and we'll go from there.
Wonderful. So I'm an empowerment coach, and my focus of work is supporting growth getters to amplify their life through deep inner work, intuitive discernment, and time-tested strategy. So I like to blend spirit with science with strategy. That is my sweet spot. And one of the things that I really adore helping my clients do is creating that life without compromise. So they don't have to compromise something that they enjoy in order to achieve the next level.
Yeah, and I love that you talk about like the three S's, right? But what people tend to miss, I think, a lot, and correct me if I'm wrong, is they look outside for, the empowerment and what class can I take, what skills can I acquire, when probably the most important thing that they need to focus on and look at is looking inside first.
Every answer or that you're looking for is inside of you. Now, I'm not going to dismiss those classes because you'll eventually come back to yourself. But I've beat around the bush a really long time, and I've taken the long, hard road to get right to where I am. And so I really encourage people to start from within to grow externally. Because as you said, everything is right here. Whatever you want to create on the outside, you need to start with on the inside, as above, so below.
Yeah. And I think that speaks to no matter what you're focused on,
Mhm.
health, wealth, relationships, finance, business growth, everything like that. The most important, in my view, like one of the most important steps that you can take in that journey is when you decide that you want something different or better, is stand up and look in the mirror first. Figure out who you are and
Yes.
what you are.
Mhm. And admittedly, that is not only a courageous act, but one of the most scary things and challenging things that people will want to do. They'll want to do everything under the sun before that. And one of the reasons it's so scary is once you know something, you can't unknow it. And so when you bring awareness to the inner chaos or the inner conflict that's happening within you, you can't run away from yourself. So I think that's why there's such a resistance for maybe the general public to really um, go within when we all know, our reality starts right from here.
Yeah, I mean, the subconscious is its job is to protect, right?
Mhm.
And so when it's faced with those decisions, like it's always going to choose safety, which is don't look over there, don't run go this way, do this. But you're right. So what are some practices that you help people with kind of with that looking in the mirror and how they should go about it, or kind of that first step of starting their journey, whatever that ultimately looks like?
For me, one of the first steps is diffusing that fear to start off with. So I love to befriend the subconscious because if you're trying to just push the subconscious out of the way, then you've got a battle on your hands. So one of the first things that I really like to do in my coaching practice or when I'm teaching is how do we make friends with the subconscious so that this experience doesn't trigger self-sabotage and fear? So that would be for me, the first step is let's make friends with ourselves. And so when we get everybody on board in our inner committee, which we all, the peanut gallery, life, it's like greasing the wheels for change.
Right. And it's like that's accomplished with, like you said, like with making friends and, basically learning from yourself that there's safety by going outside of that cocoon of, subconscious.
Mhm. One of the tools more specifically that I like to work with my clients is accessing the subconscious mind directly. So we use a process called theta healing, which activates the theta brainwave. So then that way you're having a direct conversation with the subconscious around what the plan is. And when the subconscious knows the direction and the destination of what we're doing, it really has the capacity to recognize, oh, okay, this is a safe decision. There's a plan, and it really loves that structure because it sees structure and the known as a secure space to move into.
Yeah, gotcha. And you're probably gonna either agree with me or completely disagree, but like I've heard on numerous occasions that as humans, we are 95% developed by like age 9. Like we're
Around there, I think, give or take. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, like basically we are who we are by then, like the memories and all this stuff. And so I think it's important to know that because there's stuff that is way down in, your subconscious mind that's impacting your daily behavior, feelings, whatever today. And it might be 35 years later that you're unaware of because you haven't accessed it.
Mhm.
And, it could be that, you know, Billy kicked a soccer ball and it hits you in the face or something like that. Something that you like, if it comes out, you're like, well, that's stupid. But
Mhm.
it's because of the reaction and the feelings, it's impacting how you react.
Exactly. And I think it gets complicated for most because, as you were saying, that those foundational patterns are developed between 0 and 7 or 9. There are different studies. And on top of that, you have additional patterns that are stacked above that point of inception where that program was created. So then here you are with multiple facets that might be coming to mind when you have an experience show up that creates a trigger for you. So trying to hone in on where exactly it came from and what exactly needs to be done. That's where one of the tools that I love to use is pattern recognition and then finding, okay, what is the similarity in this experience? And I found a really great way to get to the root is speaking to that emotional factor because a lot of people can tune into that.
Yeah, it's a feeling, right? Not a
Mhm.
concept or some abstract, look in the back of this one random book somewhere. It's like everyone has feelings, and being in tune with them not just helps you emotionally, but it helps you in all other ways. I mean, physically, your performance, your outlook. It's amazing, kind of like when you get to that point to where you're free to share with yourself like all this stuff. It's like all of a sudden everything that you went, you walked down let's say a strip mall yesterday and everything felt like it was out to get you and there was danger everywhere, stuff like that. You can walk down that same street after you kind of get to this point, and all of a sudden it's like everything's an opportunity.
Mhm.
Everything is like, oh, well, there's this and this and this. It's the same, and it's the same environment.
Exactly. And to speak to your point, the subconscious creates the filter for which we see the world. So depending on how that filter is created or how it's colored, then that shapes your reality. Just kind of like you can have a really great start to your day and you're in the vibe and you can keep it going, and then you stub your toe in the morning and then it's like you just can't shake it. So having that capacity to reset is such a powerful way, because as you were saying, like the subconscious essentially has 95% control of our thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and habits. And so when that's running the show and we're unaware of that, then that's a huge force that you're working against. And so for me, that's why I always go back to how do you work with it? Because you're not you're on your conscious mind is the mouse, your subconscious mind is the elephant. You're never going to knock over the elephant with the mouse, right? So it's about really getting that interdimensional being like you were speaking to, like there's all these different facets of us. And so when we get that in sync, I think I like to think of it as a inner collaboration, then everything else works so much better. Your emotions are in sync, your thoughts are in sync, your behaviors are in sync, your environment becomes in sync, and then your electromagnetic field keeps reinforcing that.
Yeah, it's I always equate it to because everyone knows people like this, right?
Mhm.
And if you don't know someone like this, that then congratulations, you are it. But they'll see people. It's like that person. They always have the luck. They're always in the middle of something. They've always got X, Y, and Z going on, and the world just lays open for them and everything like that. And it's like but they create that for themselves. It's not luck. It's intentional, and it's having that reset and looking for those opportunities. And that's the realization that you need to get is it's like there yes, I understand some of luck, but most of it we make ourselves.
Mhm.
And it's by our attitudes and our actions.
Yes, absolutely. I think you can attract, and I love your point where, because yes, happenstance happens, but then when it's synchronistic, then it's beyond coincidental.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, what is it? Happens once, it's luck. Happens twice, it's habit.
If it's your reality, well, then that's what you've created. We live in a holographic universe where we become the creators of our realities based on our perceptions and projections, right? So when we take the driver's seat, and then we empower ourselves to truly manifest what we want to see in the world.
Yeah. All right, so let's shift gears a little bit. We've talked a lot about like everything that's impacted us, looking inner, but now we've got someone that is like in tune. Like one of the things I love is like you don't have to give stuff up to get stuff. Um, but like, what are some of the things and guidance that you can help people with? Like, okay, once you find your center, your being, you're in tune, like, now what's next? Like, how do we, what are some things that we can do to move differently forward?
For me, the next step is developing that discernment. And so most people, as soon as they're in tune, they're like, all right, I want to get going. But you've got column A and column B, or the devil and, like soul versus ego, or angel versus devil, whichever way you want to split it. And so even when you're in tune, you can move in and out of being in tune super easily, just like your emotions fluctuate, your level of alignment fluctuates as well. So for me, step two is developing discernment. And that happens on a moment by moment basis, and being like, all right, so here's, and for me, I kind of quantify as that here are my core values and my desirables that I want to move towards. And how do I develop the discernment so that decision A is in alignment with this core value? And so, because you can have the data of what the connection to it, but you're always going to get two sets of data. And some people use these terms interchangeably, and I don't, and here's why. So some people will say intuition and or instinct. And for me, your intuition is from your higher mind, from your higher self, from your soul, from the creator energy, from source, whatever you want to call it, God, etc. And your instinct is based on your subconscious patterning. So that's your knee jerk reaction, reptilian mind, survival brain. And because these two sets of data essentially come into your being, having the discernment between, is this my knee jerk reaction that's leading me towards making this decision? Or is this my intuition that's guiding me towards this decision? And so having that level of discernment supports you on a moment by moment basis, because on average, most people make 70,000 subconscious choices a day. The choice of what they're going to think, choices of what they're going to feel, choice of what they're going to do. And when you have that level of discernment, and not that you need to make the decision 70,000 times, but even if you just scratch the surface of those, where you're going to find yourself is in a much better position than if you didn't have that discernment, because the subconscious knows you so well, and it knows exactly what to whisper into your ear to move you from clarity to confusion, right? It's like you start moving forward, and that's when the subconscious is like, whoa, where are you going? And
Right.
you're gonna do this big circle right back to where you were. It's gonna be a slightly better situation, but we tend to do this circle in back using the old subconscious patterns, slightly improved, right? So I always look at it as like, let's try not to just improve on a broken model. Let's reset that pattern. And so one of the things that I like to stack with discernment is pattern recognition. So I love empowering my clients with that layout of, okay, so I had this trigger, and then the next feeling, and the next thing, and the next habit, and the next discovery. And then here's how I grew out of it and developed the situation. Because there's this little journey that we take every time we go through an experience, whether it's a glimmer or a trigger, whichever way that you want to look at it, whether it's a windfall or a catalyst incident. And when you know what your old patterns are, it creates a higher level of awareness and supports you in your discernment. So for me, it's kind of like two things, but long answer short, that's where I would really focus my energy as
Yeah.
a next step.
Yeah. And by stepping out of your emotional side and coming up with like, these are my core values, these are my things that are my, red flag, green flag type of things.
Mm-hmm.
And notice I didn't say yellow flag, it's red or green.
Yes.
And because even if you've got five core values
Mm-hmm.
and you run a decision through that set of of five, if one of those isn't green, it's not going to make you happy. There's going to be some piece of you that is unsatisfied, even if it's 80% good. That 20% is going to hijack it basically because it doesn't make this one piece of you happy. And I think that's where what you're talking about with, not not just building getting a little bit higher on the same broken model, but if you come up with your set of three, four, five, whatever it is, your core values, and
Mm-hmm.
as things happen, if you run them through that consistently, every time you do, you're breaking that return trip to, to where home used to be. And the
Mm-hmm.
more often you do that, the better you get at it. And it becomes second nature. Like you don't think about like, okay, does this make me happy in this way? This. It's just when you look at a situation, you know yourself so well that immediately you're like, 4 out of 5, no. 4 out of 5,
Mm-hmm.
no. 5 out of 5, yes. Let's go look at this.
Well, and also what happens here is you're developing your discernment. So I've always got I call them emotional priorities, post-it notes all over my house, constantly reminding me of this is what I want to create. And when you look at what you want to create, and you mentioned it earlier, whether it's financial affluence, improved relationships, vibrant health, all of those experiences or circumstances that you're seeking to create can be distilled down to an emotional state of being. And so I love using like the core values, or I use the term emotional priorities, because it really helps people to be like, does this help me? And I find too, one of the caveats that can happen with them as well, it wasn't a perfect fit for peace, so I said no to it. And one of the things that I explore with my clients is, but did it improve your state of peace? So it's like, maybe it's not 100%, but is it moving you in the direction that you want to move into? Because sometimes finding that 100% for the five is not necessarily within reach. As long as it's moving you closer to your goal, it's a step forward. So I tend to have a little bit more flexibility within that. And one of the questions that I love to ask, because as soon as you ask a question, and I'm sure you've experienced this, is like the universe conspires to answer it. And so I'll ask, okay, well, here's this decision. Does it meet my emotional priorities or my core values? And I'll be like, yes, yes, yes. Not really this. I'll ask, how can I adapt or adjust this decision to provide more fun? And then as soon as you ask her, like, oh, here, and then you know exactly how to tweak it or what to ask for or how to change it in order to align better with you. So there's kind of like two things that you can do.
Yeah, and I love the flexibility of it.
Mhm.
And you're right. It's like, especially in the beginning, like you're going to struggle to find like a 5 out of 5 or even a 4 out of 5. But the more that you make selections and choices that continue to raise your level, the
Mhm.
closer you're ultimately going to get. Because let's face it, we're not saying you got to go from zero to perfectly happy and everything works, great tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's daily progress. And I tell people all the time, like, I don't ask for much. You shouldn't ask yourself for much. Just get 1% better every single day. Find
Mhm.
something that makes you 1% better today than did yesterday, because you'd be surprised. Then you start to add that up, and over a year, it's
Mhm.
like 365. And over 10 years, all of a sudden it's like you become your old self becomes unrecognizable
Mhm.
in a short amount of time, because you're not focused on these huge leaps or perfection. You're focused on improvement.
Well, and the huge leaps and the big steps happen because of the little steps. And I think sometimes people think, okay, well, this is where I am and this is where I want to be. And like, I gotta like make this incredible leap of faith in myself to achieve this goal. And the reality is, yes, the big steps are going to happen, but not without taking the baby steps to even get to that space.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
And
Yes.
I honestly think the big step and the biggest step for most is having that capacity to courageously look within.
Hmm.
Like that's that's most people's biggest hurdle, is to go to the space and look at the stuff that they need to look at in order to get to where they want to be. It's not about doing like the heavy actions. Like it's not about, like yes, you got to do your reps, so to speak, and you got to show up, you got to stay committed. But I want to say like 80% of the heavy lifting is that awareness, is that inner work.
Yeah. Well, it's because and keep in mind, like I think too often the trap that people get stuck in, and feel free to agree or disagree, is they look in they okay, I'm going to look in the mirror and figure out like who I am and what I want, and almost like without even thinking, what they want becomes what the Joneses have
Mhm.
or what Instagram showed them. And it's like you got to get rid of those external influences because you might not be a Lamborghini guy. You know, you got two kids and a wife, and that makes no sense, you know, or whatever ultimately it is, but it's finding your true self
Mhm.
and what
And
ultimately makes you
I
happy.
love that you brought that in because it's so important to remove that lens of external perception, right? Because we tend to view ourselves through the our perception of how other people see us.
Hmm.
And so sometimes when we look in the mirror, we think, okay, well, this is what they're seeing. But it's like you, in order to do the inner work, you can't even use a mirror. Right? Like I would say even close your eyes because that would help you like to release the perceptions from the external interference of other people's ideology that may or may not align with you.
Right. Yeah, and you know, there's so much out there and so much that you can do.
Mm,
It's truly it's finding where your true happiness is, and you know where do you feel the most fulfilled, and you know where do you get that accomplishment from, and like those things, and it's tough
mm. Well, and I
to
think that too is a perception. I think one of the biggest social beliefs that I come across is, well, I can't like be happy and have money, or I can't be in a loving relationship and love my job. Like I can't have it all. Like I always have to give something up. There's always going to be a quadrant of my life that is unfulfilling. And I and so we're talking about, you know, like personal subconscious beliefs, which we developed individually. But on a social construct, is I mean, who hasn't heard, you know, you can't get something for nothing, you can't have it all, you can't have your cake and eat it too. I mean, those are social patterns that are so deeply ingrained that we have like sayings for them, right? So it's like a lot of that is yes, it's a social perception, but depending on where you grew up and how you were raised, you've embodied that perception and expectation of what's possible for you until
right.
you reprogram it, basically.
Right. And that's, you know, and since we were talking a little bit about like success and financials,
Mm,
um, being rich doesn't mean that you are successful. I mean, there's plenty of people I know that out there that live amazing lives that are by no means wealthy or anything like that, but they are perfectly content and happy with where they're at and where they're going and everything like that. At the same time, I do know of at least two people in my kind of circle who are exceedingly wealthy, who are two of the most miserable human beings I've ever met.
mhm,
So they don't necessarily correlate to each other. And then I think a great exercise or thought process for anyone who is wanting to achieve more financial, whatever it is like, remember, money doesn't make you better. It just accentuates who you already are. So if you are a good-hearted, kind, giving person, and all of a sudden, and now you have money, well, you're going to be a better person. You're going to be more compassionate. You're going to be more giving. Same thing. If you're a jerk and now all of a sudden you have money, you're just a bigger jerk.
mm,
It doesn't. They don't. One doesn't make the other. It's
mhm.
like you got to be comfortable in who you are.
I think that speaks a lot to, I used to work in finance for almost 20 years. And one of the things that we came across was when people would experience a windfall, whether through an estate inheritance or actually one of our firm's clients actually won the lottery. And what I found really interesting is that most people who win big are usually in a worse position and or bankrupt within 5 years. And so I think that speaks a lot to character. um, because I've seen money affect people in many many different ways. And so I like to think of money as an instrument, and it's either going to bring the best out of you or the worst out of you. And the same is true with relationships, right?
Mhm.
Your relationship is either going to bring the best out of you or the worst out of you. Your work's either going to bring the best out of you or the work out of you. So I put money and in kind of in the same category as all of the other circumstances that you have in your life, because a for example, like the opposite of your example would be, a kind, generous person with a lack of boundaries with a lot of money, that could end poorly as well. Just as
True.
well, like a jerk who maybe was a jerk because they were so stressed out about money becomes a kinder, more generous person. So I think it's an instrument that is it we are so unique in how our patterns are structured that it's real I find it really interesting to see how things unfold, because then it shows what our foundational patterns are and how we respond to situations.
Yeah, and I mean, it's helping people find out about themselves.
Mhm.
And we can't do that for any of our clients. Like, we're going to give you tools, but you need to do the work because it's who you are as a person. What motivates you as a person? Are you uber competitive or not so much? Or what drives you? If you were 7 years old, close your eyes. What did your life look like? Okay, open your eyes. You're 42. How close are you? Are you, on track, or is the 7 year old looking at you going, what are you doing? You know, because I think if most people are honest about it, their 7 year old version of themselves is looking at them going, what are we doing here? It's like, because when you're 7, 8 years old, society hasn't pressured on you yet. Like, you haven't felt the weight of different responsibilities, stuff, and everything like that. And the world is wide open.
I think it depends deeply on your upbringing. So maybe a child who had like a loving, supportive, secure home would
Mm-hmm.
have the world wide open. But a child of that age that had an unsecure experience would have deeply been dependent on the acceptance and the environment around it in order for it to feel safe and secure. And one of the things too that can either be a benefit or a hardship is and you brought this up earlier, is a lot of our foundational programs created between, let's say, 0 and 9. A lot of our adult, like a lot of us are like, oh, I'm an adult, but I still feel like a kid. And in a lot of ways, that's very much true, because the programs that we're mostly running on, unless you've taken the time to upgrade them or develop them in some sort of professional or personal development way, is many of us are running our lives from a 9-year-old perspective. And so how we deal with situations, how we deal with conflict, how we deal with money, it's like it's an adult version but of it, because you've stacked that patterning up that's enhanced the 9-year-old pattern, but when push comes to shove, you see the core of what that pattern is. So I think it can kind of go both ways depending on how that foundation is built. Because I'm sure you've had this happen in your life, and I know I've been that 2-year old having a tantrum and then going, oh my God, like I'm so embarrassed. I just had a tantrum as a full grown adult. We've all had seen adults have like
Yeah, I
complete
hope I hope no
my
one saw I hope no one
meltdowns.
saw
And so
that.
that's just the pattern unraveling, right? Right before your eyes, and being like, okay, so this is how they deal with confrontation. Or, when it's like, I don't know what I'm crying right now. It's like, because that's how you dealt with it when you were a little kid. That was the safety mechanism that you had based on the environment that you were given with the strategy. You did the best you could with what you had in the moment, and
Mhm.
you either improved upon that or kept it, right?
Yeah, and that's, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, however you threw tantrums, it's okay if you go through one at 45 years old. It happens. But like
It's
understand,
telling too, right? It's like that's an invitation.
yeah, and just understand like what led you to that point that
Hmm.
got that to react that way, and just understand it and then be like, okay, what did I learn from that
Yeah.
scenario? Because that's I wish people would really truly embrace that. Life is just a journey of learning. And if
Hmm.
we approach each situation that way, like, and this will be the last thing for me before we kind of, I get you to wrap up, but like, whenever you ask someone, like, okay, I'm gonna challenge you to try something. What are the scenarios? People will typically say, well, I'll either succeed or I'll fail. And I completely disagree with that. I
Hmm.
say you're either going to succeed. If you don't get there, you're going to learn. And the only time that you're going to fail is if you quit. Because that's ultimately what it's like. It's like, even if it's a complete rewrite of, okay, I got to redo basically 95% of it, you learned and you're still moving forward. It's only when you're like, forget it, I'm, I'm just done with XYZ, whatever it is, that's where the failure becomes because
Hmm.
everything else is learning opportunities.
Well, and I would even take it a step further in saying that even in the quitting, you learn something about yourself, because that is a teaching moment, right? So, because it's like, oh, okay, every time you get to this point, this is when I give up. Okay, so what is it about that threshold? Like that is a learning experience as well when you pay attention to it. So I would even go farther in saying every experience is an opportunity for learning if you choose to use it. I think that's kind of for me the key element,
Right,
including quitting, because I've quit things and best decision ever, because I'm like, you know what? I went down this path. It was the right path for a while. And intellectually, the next, you know, rational step would to keep moving in that direction. But I'm just not, it's not for me anymore. So I'm going to let it go. Right. So I
right.
think in each, even in quitting, it's either in alignment or out of alignment with the direction that you want to move forward. But if you just keep quitting all the time and you don't kind of stay at the same space, that in itself is a learning opportunity, right? Okay. So I've got a very low threshold for change, because as soon as I start taking two steps forward, I give up.
Yeah, I'm always the person that puts a pinky toe in the pool first,
Mm.
but I never just dive right in or whatever it is, the
Yeah.
old adage, burn the boats, or burn the bridge, it's like, okay, if you're going to make the effort to change your life or improve your life or take all the stuff that you've learned about yourself and make these changes, that's great. The answer is on that side of the bridge. But when you get there, you got to turn around and burn it because otherwise, that's your safety net, right? That's your little, oh, this didn't work. I'm going to go scramble back.
Mm. Well, and I think so. I have a different perspective, because I
Okay.
think that's one of the main reasons a lot of people resist change is the perspective of they need to burn the place down after they leave it. And so my perspective is bringing with you the best parts of you and simply leaving behind, because the subconscious will get triggered by the burning of the old safety mechanism, but then you create a reality where they're unnecessary. So for me, it's more about making the new reality so supportive, so enticing, and so safe for the subconscious that the old reality actually feels less safe. Does that make sense how we
Yeah,
said that?
for sure.
It's like,
No,
so it's
yeah,
like, it's because when you think about it, we are such interdimensional beings. If I'm like, screw where I've been, well, then I'm essentially casting away aspects of myself, and then it creates like a fragmented self. And so for me, it's about evolving the interdimensional being into the new reality without needing to give anything up, including where you've been. Does that make sense? So
yeah,
like, what I mean, I was like, give nothing up without compromise.
yeah. No,
Keep
but
all the bridges.
yeah, but you're right. It's like you have to remember where you came from. And there's
Mm,
a way, like what you're speaking of, is that, as you make these changes, incorporate them, they become more and more of who you are, what you want, that they become your safety and the old you becomes the unsafety.
mm-hmm,
Ultimately, that's the place that you want to go to because at that point, then it's just like, well, why would I want to go back to make myself unhappy?
mm.
Right? It's like, I'm happier here. I'm happier going this way and doing it this way.
Yeah, absolutely. And to speak to that, when I worked on the stock market, which is high, and I worked for portfolio manager. So we managed multi-million dollar accounts. So like a push of a button was like, a few million back and forth. So if you did put in the wrong number, that was it.
Yeah.
And
Is that
when
six zeros or seven zeros?
yeah,
What?
I know, it's like, am I buying or selling? What am I doing here? And when I look back at the level of stress that was my normal day, and as soon as I start to experience stress now in my life, I'm like, ew, which is so interesting because on like my identity was like, I work well under pressure and da da da, like was almost on my resume. And now it was like, I work well in flow, I work well in alignment. So it's like who my identity has become, and I've embraced that part of myself and allow those other parts of me to become integrated in that new reality. Then as soon as I get a hint of stress, I'm like, ew, no thanks. Right. So
Right,
like that's it. And what I mean by it's like I still embrace and love where I've been and utilize all of the golden nuggets from that experience, especially when I'm working with somebody through financial programs or like money mindset, that kind of stuff, right? Because it's like, it's just a number on a screen at the end of the
mhm,
day for the most part, right? So the mentality around it, bringing elements forward and then letting go of the self sabotage and the limiting patterns and beliefs that don't serve anymore. So for me, that's what I would put to bed more.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah, and there's, like you said, there's always stuff throughout our histories, those golden nuggets that
Mm,
they become part of the stories that we tell. Those are the ones that, when we were younger, you used to sit on granddad's lap and he'd tell you these stories. Those are his golden nuggets throughout his time. Um, and we want to have those as well. Not that we just want them to be a nugget and a story, but not necessarily a definition of who we are or who we're becoming.
exactly. And I think I love that you said that because I think that's such a perfect closing is that for me, the takeaway is who do you want to choose to become? Because I think what the mentality is I got to discover who that is, but the reality is that I get to decide who I want that to be as the creator of my reality. I also get to create who I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So, well, cool. Well, it's been a pleasure. For the viewing audience out there, please like and subscribe. That way you don't miss any of the episodes coming up. I've enjoyed having Anik on. If you have as well, her contact information, stuff like that, will be in the show notes below. But Anik, I will give you the last 2 minutes to wrap us up and kick us out of here.
Perfect. Well, it's been a delight speaking to a like-minded person, and I I hope and trust that your audience will get some really actionable tools. You're talking about the golden nuggets from my granddad, so I'd love to finish our episode with this. So my grandfather, 98 and a half years old, I asked him, Pepe, what out of like everything you've learned in your life, like what is the golden nugget? And he said, knowledge is useless unless you use it, and then it becomes wisdom. And so, my hope for your audience and everybody who in our world is that it's great to have the awareness, but take it to the next level and practice it. Do something with what you learned and heard today. You definitely got an aha moment. What's the next step to move you forward? Because the reality is, no one else can move you forward. Just as Todd shared, you got to do it. You're the person you're waiting for to rescue you from your reality, whether you like it or not. So thanks so much, everybody. It's been an absolute pleasure. And until our paths cross again.
Anik, thank you so much. And for everyone else, we'll see you guys next episode.